Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Spill the Tea with Tommy D. Before we get started on the tea today, I'm going to answer some fan questions. So we had two questions. Jackie from YouTube asked about tea, where to store your tea, the best way to store it, and how long does it last. So, most important thing about storing loose leaf tea is airtight containers. So what I mean by an airtight container, I mean like the ones you may have been seeing me use. They come in different shapes and sizes. This one's really nice, got some painted leaves on it. This one has like a paper wrapping on it of polka dots. This one's a little tiny one. So the best part, so airtight, you want it to be airtight because you don't want the scent to start to it'll start to lose its scent and its flavor. Pretty much my rule of thumb is, sometimes people used to ask me like, well, can I keep it in like a Ziploc bag? Well, if you hold your Ziploc bag and go to smell the Ziploc bag, you will smell the tea. If you're smelling the tea, and same thing with anything, spices, coffee, if you're smelling it, you're losing flavor. The other thing that's really good for storing loose leaf tea, it's a better way, is also light tight, for the same reason like they say that if you have like a beer in a clear bottle versus a beer in a dark tinted bottle, the dark tinted one will keep its flavor better because the sun can actually take away. So the only time this would be an issue is if you say you had like mason jars, which do work really well for tea. But if you have the mason jar and say you're like, oh, I'll be cute and display it in the window so everyone can see, it looks really pretty. Yes, it looks pretty, but the sun is going to ruin the flavor on those teas. So most important are airtight and light tight. You always want to hear that, like a little pop, always sounds good. And yeah, that's pretty much it as far as canisters go. So I'd recommend, airtight and light tight, best way for it. Second question I had was from Grace on Facebook. So she noticed, so the difference is, in a couple episodes, I poured the water in first, dipped the tea leaves into the water, versus I just poured the tea leaves over the water in other videos. So it really isn't a big issue depending on how you do it. The reason why I poured water over the leaves, like in the first episode, was because we were doing a black tea. It required boiling water. I didn't have to cool down the water for it to be ready for the tea. So it's not going to burn the tea leaves. For, say, the sencha, if I put the ice cubes in there and then poured the boiling hot water on there, you still can burn the tea leaves. So the reason why I put the ice cubes in first, poured the water in, let the ice cubes melt, then dipped my strainer with the tea leaves in there. If you want to like put the tea leaves in your tea kettle, put the ice cubes in your tea kettle and let the water cool, then just pour it over the tea leaves. That would be the optimal. But if you're just brewing black teas at home, then you don't have to really worry about the ice cubes, and you can just pour it right on top. Black teas are herbals. So now let's talk about our tea today. So we've done a white tea, we've done a green tea, and we've done a black tea. So today we are going to do an oolong tea. So, so we mentioned white teas and green teas, not oxidized. Black teas, completely oxidized. Oolong teas are partially oxidized. So they will let the leaves sit out and start to oxidize. And once they hit kind of a midway point, so not a black tea, but it's still somewhat oxidized, they use the heat like pan firing or something like that to stop the oxidation process, and that's how you get an oolong tea. So there are actually a couple different types of oolong teas. There are greener oolong teas, and there are darker oolong teas. So a darker oolong, they'll let it go like a 70% oxidized, and then they'll stop the oxidation process. And then also what they do is they tend to be more twisted, kind of like, and you'll see when we brew the oolong, they always use like bigger leaves. So it's really cool because you will definitely see the big tea leaf, the full tea leaf that made your tea. So the green tea, like I said, the darker ones, you twist them. They're a little more twisted, about 70% oxidized. Some of them, I've had like one was called a Keelan Fireside. It was like 85% oxidized. So it was really cool. It was like very, very, almost like a black tea, but a little bit lighter. So it was really, really neat. Then we have our green oolong teas. So these ones are going to be about 30% oxidized, and then instead of the twisting, they really compact them into little tiny, almost pellet-looking things. They look like, so it almost reminds me of like a gunpowder green tea, but they're a little bit bigger because they're using like the big tea leaves. So they're about, like I said, about 30% oxidized. I should also mention there's a difference in flavor too. So the darker oolongs tend to be a little like sweeter and kind of fruitier almost, and then your greener ones can be a little more floral and a little more fragrant. And then we have, so like I said, we have our green ones, we have our darker ones, then we have what we're brewing today. We are brewing a Pouchong Bao Zhong, hope I pronounced that right. It is an oolong tea from a company actually local here on Long Island, which is where I'm from. It is called Clipper Ship Tea Company, and I'm guessing about this time, yeah, I picked this tea up in person in the before time, you know, like when we could go out and see people. The shop, again, Clipper Ship Tea Company in Huntington, New York. Really, really nice shop right in the village of Huntington. Eventually, when we're allowed to be outside, I suggest you check it out. If not, I'm sure they're probably doing some sort of e-commerce shop or online, you know, ordering. So, the reason why I said that this one is a little different than the darker ones, the darker oolongs and the greener oolongs, is this tea is actually kind of like a weird combination of both. It's actually oxidized less, so more like maybe 20% oxidized. Then, instead of balled up, it's actually, instead of balled up like you would usually see a greener oolong, this one is actually twisted like a darker oolong. So this is like a combination of the two. It's the hipsters of oolong tea. I don't know. If this oolong tea was a person, it would be in a polyamorous relationship in Williamsburg. If you're not from New York, you don't know what that means, just take my word for it. No, I'm just kidding around. Anyway, so let's take a look at these tea leaves. So like I said, so these ones are going to be a little bit lighter than your typical oolong, and you can see how big these tea leaves are, and you can see how twisted they're, just like rolled and twisted together. And again, this is another single source tea. So this one is actually from Taiwan. So most oolongs come from China or Taiwan. The ones that I found, I do have kind of a crazy Darjeeling oolong that I got, and that's going to be a whole nother episode. I've never had it before, so I'm really excited. But this one's really great. Oolong tea is also really great for multiple infusions. You can get at least 3 or 4 infusions. It's also said to be good for digestion. So if you go to a nice fancy Chinese restaurant, they'll probably give you some nice oolong with that. So I did 2 teaspoons, 195 degrees for this oolong tea. So I'm going to grab myself 1 ice cube. As I mentioned, 1 ice cube's good for oolongs, anything about 195. This is my, it's about 12, 14 ounce cup. And I'm going to, so this tea said 1 teaspoon for 8 ounces, 3 to 4 minutes. Since this is a little less than 16 ounces, I did 2 teaspoons, and I'm only going to do the 3 minutes. So that melted very quickly, which is awesome. So again, we got our oolong tea. All right. Boom, 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 boom. All right. So, tea leaves in the strainer. Got my nice clear mug. One more shout out to Chris Bonson for this bad boy here. And we have our 3-minute timer here. A little shake it, get it nice in there. All right. Here we go. I don't think anyone actually knows which generation they're mad at. Because all we ever hear about are millennials and boomers, but we don't realize that there's 2 other generations involved in this. I mean, there's the ones above boomers, but I feel like mostly you hear about baby boomers and millennials. There's also Gen X, so it goes boomers, Gen X, millennials or Generation Y, and then Generation Z. I am a millennial. Most people think millennials are these like ultra woke college kids, you know, who grew up with cell phones, don't know how to talk to people face to face. Millennials are 25 to 40 years old. Okay? So, like, this is not us. And everyone thinks if you're in college, you're a millennial, or you're complaining about this, you're a millennial. That's not the case. Most millennials, not even most, all millennials, 25 to 40, we are either we are in the workforce, we are having families, we have high blood pressure. This is not us. No, millennials are not rioting in the streets for more gender pronouns. We are, you know, we're paying our taxes and we're arguing with insurance companies. Okay? And I'm like I'm on the younger spectrum of millennials. I'm 29. 25 is the youngest. The first music I had was on cassette tapes. Okay? Like, no one knows who's mad at who. You know, I had cassette tapes. Millennials, we listened to ska music, pop punk, we'd spiked up hair and chains, Janko jeans. That was a little bit before my time, but it still happened. Like, people don't realize that we're older now. That's not, I don't know. It's very, very confusing. We have, and then, so, like, what people don't realize, they're like, then you have, like, people use now okay boomer as an insult. Okay boomer was made by Generation Z. It was not made by Generation Y or millennials. And I'm not saying Generation Z is bad either. I'm just saying, get your facts straight. If you're going to start blaming people, saying, oh, everyone's young and this and that, they're causing all these issues. No. Millennials, we're just stressed out about work and life and everything else that comes between. If I had to guess, I'd say Gen X and Gen Z are the ones at war. Because Gen Z is like in their 40s to 55, and I'm sorry. Gen Z is the younger ones. They're like they're 25 and under. There might be another one down there, but I don't think they count yet because they're probably still in diapers or something. That's it. Tea's done. Get your facts straight, people. I'm sick of it. Sick of you blaming all our millennials, whatnot. Excuse me. That one got heated. It's been irking me for a while. I don't even think I'm done talking about this. I'm so frustrated. All right. What I'm saying is my first cell phone had 6 contacts, and we had to pay 25 cents for text message. It's driving me nuts. Okay. Oolong tea. So this definitely, as I kind of assumed, because of the, as I mentioned, like that 20% oxidation, it's much, much lighter bodied than, say, like a black tea or a darker oolong. So let's take a look at, you know what, let me try it first before it gets cold. So, definitely a light body. It's definitely a pale yellowish, not like that almost neon green we saw from that Samadori Sencha. So, as always, we are going to take a sniff. It definitely smells more, it smells a little sweet, but definitely more on the fragrant and floral sense, so I'd say closer to like that greener oolong. Yeah, definitely fragrant. A little sweetness to it. It's a little drier. You can kind of taste like the tannins in it and stuff like that. We have yeah, it reminds me of like a floral, kind of like how you would smell almost like I wouldn't say a dandelion, but like it has that like very garden-esque floralness to it. But it actually is very refreshing though. I'd say this tea, if you're into something a little lighter, but like a little more. I spilled the tea though. I did. I got drops here. It happened, friends. If you like something a little lighter, not as strong as a black tea, if you like almost like a white tea, but you want something with a little more body to it. As I mentioned, body is kind of how much it takes over your mouth, like how much it lingers and stuff like that. This does have a nice crisp linger to it for sure. But it is definitely more of the white tea, green tea drinker's alley for sure. Definitely, it's really interesting how light it is, because usually even a greener oolong will yield a darker brew than this. So it's really, really nice, and it looks like, because like of how light it is, you would not expect it to have as much flavor that it does. So again, Clippership Tea Company is a Pouchong Bao Zhong from Taiwan. So actually it's pretty cool. So let's see if I can get a nice big old leaf here. There's one. This is definitely so you can see that's kind of more what we're looking at. If you can see more of those tea leaves there. I'm not really entirely sure if you can see it. Thinking about posting this kind of as just an audio too. So for people listening, it's just like a big leaf. And you can see how it really is just like a big leaf. And most people don't see that because of the usual tea bags. They're just all chopped up in a powder kind of form. So most people don't get that ability to see that. What's also cool about oolong tea is if you want to go a little bit longer on the steep time, it's not going to get too bitter. In fact, in traditional Chinese culture, I had some Chinese friends that would tell me that they usually just put the tea in the cup with the hot water. Because the tea leaves are so big, you can kind of just like use your teeth and like slurp it and not have to worry about the strainer. It's a little weird because then you end up like kind of spitting it out like. So that's a little not up my alley, but I definitely I've tried it that way, and it's kind of interesting. That's really good. Awesome. So, we hit all our stops now. We have our white tea. We did our champagne white from Tea Lyra. We did our Samadori Sencha from Matcha Konami. We did our Earl Grey from the local Turkish shop I went to. And then we have our oolong here. So those are the four main bases of tea. And then we will start to get into, I picked up some other ones, like a rooibos. I have a yerba mate I can do. That's getting more into the herbal territory. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And it's going to be, those are long steep times. So it's like 5-minute steep times. So I hope you're ready to hear me say some ridiculous stuff. All right, awesome. Well, thank you for everyone that has been watching these videos. I hope you're enjoying them, sharing them, liking them. This has been another episode of Spill the Tea with Tommy D. So, have a good one.